Thank you, John. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Merci, John, de cette introduction.
Thank you, John, for your introduction.
John Baird for welcoming us all here to Ottawa. Reminds me 4 of my favorite new words in the English language. Foreign Minister John Baird. Isn't that great? Fellow Conservatives, welcome to our nation's capital. Welcome to Conservative Convention 2011, and welcome to this moment of promise about which we have dreamed and for which we have worked for so long. Un gouvernement conservateur fort.
Conservative government which will be strong, stable, national, and a majority Conservative government.
Stable, national, majority Conservative government. Now, I've been asked to speak to you tonight about our election victory. But first, let me say to you, and through you to the tens of thousands of grassroots Conservatives who you represent, thank you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for everything that you did, everything that you sacrificed to make possible our historic victory on May the 2nd. You kept our movement alive in your communities during what were some bleak and difficult years for Conservatives in Canada. Cast your minds back for a moment to that time just a few years ago when Stephen Harper and Peter MacKay launched the new Conservative Party. Do you remember? The Liberals were in their 3rd consecutive majority, slashing our military, insulting our allies, raising our taxes, and scandalously funneling tax dollars into their own party. Ils alimentaient les chicanes contre le Québec.
They fueled arguments against Quebec rather than finding solutions with an open federalism. They were squandering taxpayers' money in the name of national unity. Whereas we knew that first and foremost it was done to help the Liberal Party itself. They thought they were invincible. They thought they could do anything.
New leader who, the media told us, was a juggernaut, set to govern Canada with supermajorities for as long as they wanted. After all, they were the natural governing party of Canada, and we were merely a divided opposition at the margins of Canadian politics. But you didn't give up hope. You didn't stop believing. Many of you spent uncountable hours away from your families building the strong foundation upon which this majority government stands. You didn't make these sacrifices for personal advantage or for gain, but because of your love for this country and your desire to build a Canada that is strong and free. Thanks to your hard work, thanks to Stephen Harper's brilliant leadership, and thanks to the confidence of the Canadian people, we served as the longest and most successful minority government in Canadian history. We have led Canada through global turbulence with the strongest economy in the developed world. We have rebuilt our military, restored Canada as a principled voice for democracy on the world stage, protected victims of crime, supported families, and cut federal taxes to their lowest level in 50 years. And now we have a strong, stable national majority mandate. But what became of that Liberal juggernaut? 3rd place, 34 seats, their worst result since Confederation. But it's funny. You know, if you listen to our critics, you might believe that we didn't really win this election. Certains prétendent même que...
And some would argue that if the vote were to take place again today, there'd be a different result.
A fluke, the result of some lucky vote splitting or maybe voter apathy. You know, they'll keep dreaming up excuses. But friends, here is the truth. Stephen Harper is the first Prime Minister in more than a century to increase a governing party's share of the vote in 3 straight elections, and ours is the first party in Canadian history to increase its share of the vote in 4 straight elections, never before achieved in Canadian history. We increased our support by more than 600,000 new votes, earning the trust of more than 5.8 million Canadians. That is the second largest number of votes ever cast for a political party in Canadian history, second only to the Tory victory of 1984. We received 40% of the popular vote, which was the average share of the vote won by the 3 Chrétien majority governments. Conservative ridings were won with big margins. On average, Conservative MPs won with 54% of the vote, and 2/3 of our MPs won with a margin of more than 20%. Now compare that to the Liberals. Most of their remaining MPs eked out narrow wins. 2/3 of the Liberal caucus won their seats with a margin of less than 10%. In other words, it was the Liberals who were the beneficiaries of vote splitting, not its victims. Now we won 23 additional seats for a total of 54% of the seats in the House of Commons. By comparison, the Trudeau Liberals claimed a mandate for radical change in 1980 after winning only 52% of the seats in the House of Commons without a single MP from BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, or the North. On a gagné un mandat majoritaire.
We won a majority mandate for candidates from all different backgrounds and every region.
Seats in every province, and we won 2 of the 3 territories. We won the popular vote in 8 provinces and in the North. We won big in rural and suburban Canada, and yes, Conservatives won the most seats in urban Canada too. Now, the media, do you remember they used to say that the Conservatives were, they just said this a few months ago, locked out of urban Canada, as though Edmonton and London, Ottawa and Winnipeg were just small towns. I guess maybe they said that because you couldn't see those places from the CPC headquarters on Front Street in Toronto. They're not saying that anymore, folks. That's because Conservatives won more seats in the city of Toronto itself than any other party. Tory Toronto is back. Actually, if they go up to the top of that CBC building or look out from the editorial suite of the Toronto Star and look far enough, they might actually be able to see Joe Oliver's riding of Eglinton Lawrence, folks. It's there. They can't deny it. Bien que nous avons été déçus par les défauts.
Although we were disappointed with the loss of some of our great members from the Quebec caucus, nevertheless, we got more votes than the Liberals in Quebec. We more won seats than the Bloc in Quebec. And that is a fact. And we have a very strong foundation of support for the future when Quebecers realize that the NDP is a party of tax-raising centralizers. And we are now, and this is very interesting, we are now the party of Francophones outside Quebec. We won 2/3 of the ridings with a significant francophone population outside Quebec, such as Saint-Boniface with Shelley Glover, Madawaska-Rescagouche with Benevalcourt, and Ottawa-Orléans with Raoul Galipeau.
We are now the party of Aboriginal Canadians. A growing number of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Canadians are supporting our message of hope and opportunity. That's why Conservative MPs now represent 2/3 of Canada's Aboriginal population, and it's why we have the largest group of Aboriginal MPs ever to sit in the federal parliament, with talented, principled men and women like Rob Clark, Rod Bernouche, and Leona Aglukok. Give them and all of our Aboriginal MPs a big hand. Nous représentons maintenant des régions.
And we now represent many areas that had never before in history voted Conservative, such as Glengarry Prescott Russell with Pierre Lemieux, Kenora with Greg Rickford, and Labrador with Peter Panachery.
And we made huge breakthroughs in other Liberal strongholds, and some that we didn't win but came very close, boding well for the future. Not long ago, for example, Vaughan was one of the safest Liberal ridings in the country. But on May the 2nd, Julie Infantino won Vaughan with a margin of 19,000 votes. In Sydney, Victoria, Cecil Clark's spirited campaign came within a few hundred votes of winning what had been one of the safest Liberal ridings in Atlantic Canada. Et il y a une décennie, les libéraux gagnaient.
Only a decade ago, the Liberals won Mont-Royal, the former riding of Pierre Trudeau, by a margin of 89%. But on May the 2nd, our Conservative candidate, Sauli Zadel, came within 5% of beating the Liberal incumbent.
Chers amis,
so my dear fellow Conservatives, there is no such thing now as a safe Liberal seat.
No longer such a thing as a safe Liberal riding in Canada. And the orange wave that we heard so much about, well, it couldn't displace the blue sea of support for Conservatives, even in areas that had historically been represented by the NDP. Take Yorkton Melville, for example. It used to be known as Red Square because it was the strongest CCF and NDP riding in the country, but it isn't anymore. Gary Breitkreutz just won Yorkton Melville for the 7th straight time with nearly 70% of the vote. And for the first time ever, the NDP does not represent the hard-working people of Elmwood-Transcona in Winnipeg. Conservative MP Lawrence Todt does. More and more hard-working traditional New Democrats are realizing that downtown Jack Layton doesn't respect their values, but that Stephen Harper's Conservatives do. Just ask a former CAW auto worker member like Jeff Watson, our Conservative MP for Essex. But friends, perhaps the most important development in this election was this. On May the 2nd, it became clear that the Conservative Party is now the party of new Canadians. For decades, the Liberals took for granted the support of Canada's immigrant communities. And while Conservatives have always actually been the party of diversity, we allowed our adversaries to monopolize political relationships with cultural communities. This meant, for example, that in the 2000 election, Liberals had a 60-point lead amongst immigrants. And here is perhaps one of the most important achievements of Stephen Harper's leadership. He understood that most new Canadians are natural, small C conservatives, that in their values and in the way they live their lives, in their aspirations, and that by making a sustained effort to reach out on the basis of our shared values, we could turn those small C conservatives into big C conservatives, and on May the 2nd, we did just that. Polls indicate that we won at least 42% of the votes of immigrants to Canada, higher than our support within the general population, giving us a 20-point lead over the Liberals amongst New Canadians, from a 60-point deficit to a 20-point lead, one of the great achievements of Stephen Harper's Conservative leadership. That's why our caucus today represents 54% of immigrants to Canada. And it's why Conservatives swept many of the most diverse parts of our country, like Peel region in the GTA, where, let's hear it from Peel, where Bob Deckert led the way. He was the lonely MP there, but he is now joined by 8 Peel Conservative MPs, having swept the region. Swept it with ridings like Brampton-Springdale, a majority of whose residents are New Canadians, where in 2 elections, Parm Gill and his amazing team managed to turn a 10,000-vote Liberal lead into a 10,000-vote Conservative victory on May the 2nd. And ridings like Richmond in BC, where Alice Wong won 58% of the vote in a constituency where 2/3 of the voters are New Canadians. In election after election, Conservatives used to be shut out of majority immigrant ridings, but in this election, for the first time ever, we won a majority of those seats. Yet again, I think for the 5th straight election, we presented the most diverse slate of candidates of any federal party, and we now have elected the most diverse caucus in Canada's parliamentary history. We also have more Conservative women MPs than ever before, and we have achieved all of this without condescending Liberal NDP-type quotas, affirmative action, or appointed candidates. Every one of our MPs ran on their merits and earned their election. So, how did we achieve these historic breakthroughs? Well, Stephen Harper's strong, steady leadership obviously gave Canadians confidence. Our government's track record and pro-growth policies were obviously a big factor. All of our hard organizational work, both at the local and national level, gave us a definite edge. Of course, it was also helpful that our adversaries were focused on the obsessions of the chattering classes, like Taliban prisoners, rather than the practical bread-and-butter concerns of hardworking Canadian families. But I believe that this election has seen the creation of a new, durable, and diverse Conservative electorate for a very basic reason. Because Conservative values are Canadian values. And as a party, we are finally speaking to that. Values like freedom, enterprise, and hard work, personal responsibility, equality of opportunity, and respect for law and order, family, faith, and tradition. Canadians of all backgrounds, and particularly New Canadians, are drawn to our party not in spite of our values like the media think, but because of our Conservative values. They see in our beliefs the highest aspirations of all Canadians. Now, the left-wing elites, they make the fundamental mistake of confusing our country with its government. For ideological reasons, They just can't see it any other way. But as conservatives, we have the immense advantage of seeing things as they are, that the country comes first. And as we've seen, any presumed natural governing party that forgets this is in serious trouble. Canadians don't love government, we love our dominion. We don't depend on the bloated bureaucracies of the nanny state. We thrive on our freedom and are upheld by the rule of law. We don't assume that history began in the summer of love. We honor a tradition reaching back to the Magna Carta. We don't think only of our rights. We are mindful of our responsibilities. We don't mistake relativism for tolerance, and we're not afraid to call certain barbaric cultural practices what they are. We seek unity in diversity, and we know it can flourish only when supported by our common values. As conservatives, as Canadians, our heroes are not protesters or celebrity activists. Our heroes are the practical visionaries who united our country, the immigrants who left everything behind to help build it, the brave soldiers in every generation, including our own, who have laid down their lives to defend it. And our priorities as conservatives are the real-world, everyday concerns of our fellow Canadians. They're raising a family in Brampton West. They're starting a small business in Vancouver South. They're proudly taking the oath of citizenship in York Centre. Ils s'occupent de leurs enfants qui jouent au soccer à Longueuil.
They look after their children who are playing soccer in Longueuil. They're organising cultural activities in the Lower Shore.
And sustaining our local communities, one person, one family, and one neighborhood at a time. Yes, the election is over, but for us, the real campaign has just begun. The campaign to secure a vibrant and prosperous future for our country. This is our task for this weekend. This is our task for the next 4 years and beyond. And this is a special responsibility for you, the grassroots of our party, to ensure that our government does not waver and that we stay true to our conservative principles. So someday, long after this meeting is over, someday, long after we've stopped celebrating our victory and after you and I have been forgotten, someone will ask, what did the Conservatives do with their majority of 2011? Let us make sure that it will be said that we seized the opportunity, that we kept Canadians' trust, that we made Canada the true north, as strong and as free as it can be. Que Dieu bénisse le Canada, God bless Canada, and the Maple Leaf forever. Thank you. Thank you. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce the man who is one of the pillars of our party, who we are honoring tonight. Building a successful political party takes, as I've said, dedication, hard work, selflessness, and leadership. It also takes a lot of time. The results on May 2nd didn't happen overnight. In many ways, they were the culmination of years of hard work, of effort, and struggle. Le crédit d'un tel succès.
And the credit for this success obviously belongs to the Prime Minister. But the Prime Minister was also able to count on a long tradition of leadership, as well as an experienced team.
Who exemplifies both those things is our next speaker, the Honourable Stockwell Day.